No one ever confessed to a crime they didn't commit after a good night's sleep. In 1964, a 17-year-old from San Diego named Randy Gardner stayed awake with no pharmaceutical assistance for 11 days and 25 minutes to set a new world record. He claims that it did not have much negative effect on him since he was able to beat one of the researchers studying him at pinball on the 10th day. But sleep deprivation isn't always fun and games. The term brainwashing comes to us from the Chinese term xinao, which was coined in the 1940s to describe some of the methods that Chinese communists used to try to help enlighten their countrymen as to the nature of the great, glorious, and eternally correct Communist Party of China. The term first appeared in English in 1950, used by a staunchly anti-communist American journalist named Edward Hunter to explain a puzzling series of events coming out of the Korean War. American service members were occasionally captured and held as prisoners of war by the North Koreans, who were working closely with the Chinese. And the Chinese were releasing films of some of these Americans in which they confessed to war crimes, horrific war crimes, including germ warfare, and also harshly denounced American aggression. Not only did they do that, but they did it with incredible sincerity. How could this happen? According to Edward Hunter, the answer was brainwashing. There were a lot of theories, but the general idea was that those diabolical Chinese, probably led by Dr. Fu Manchu or someone very much like him, had perfected techniques entirely unknown to Western science, which allowed them to reach right into the brain and rearrange your ability to think, rewrite your memory, and change who you are. Brainwashing became a common theme in books and movies, including The Manchurian Candidate, in which a former POW comes back from Korea, spoiler alert, programmed to assassinate a presidential candidate. But it was all speculation until these POWs began to return after the truce in 1953. So what did happen in those secret labs? In 1956, Albert D. Biderman, a psychologist working for the US Air Force, reported the results of debriefing 235 Air Force members who had been held during the war. What fascinating things did he learn about the techniques used? Not much, it turns out. The techniques the Chinese used were all tried and true methods long applied in coercive interrogations, but perhaps applied with a little more enthusiasm by the Chinese. They used solitary confinement, darkness, restraints, but one of the most important things that they used was sleep deprivation. It turns out that extreme sleep deprivation can have severe consequences, notwithstanding Randy Gardner's prowess at pinball. It has been known to lead to hallucinations, confusion, depression, and both memory loss and the acquiring of false memories. It also creates a need that can be so powerful that it overwhelms all other desires. Menachem Begin, who was Prime Minister of Israel from 1977 to 1983, was subjected to sleep deprivation as a prisoner in the Soviet Union, and he described it as follows. In the head of the interrogated prisoner, a haze begins to form. His spirit is wearied to death. His legs are unsteady, and he has one sole desire, to sleep. Anyone who has experienced this desire knows that not even hunger and thirst are comparable with it. Before any of you get too comfortable with the idea that this is something that is only done to people by totalitarian regimes, you should know that the lessons that we learned from our POWs in the Korean War have not been lost on our police and military. On the night of April 19th, 1989, a woman named Patricia Miley was raped and brutally beaten while jogging in Central Park. There had been There had been a group of Black and Latino youths who had been in the park that evening, harassing and in some cases attacking people. So the police rounded up as many of them as they could and brought them in for questioning. They eventually focused on 5 of the kids, ranging from 14 to 16 years of age, and aggressively questioned them without their parents or lawyers for at least 7 hours each. That may not seem much compared to what the Korean War POWs experienced, but it doesn't take as long with a scared kid. The 5 were sentenced to terms ranging from 5 to 15 years, and all of them had served their sentences by 2001, when a convicted serial rapist named Matias Reyes confessed to the attack, told police that he had acted alone, and provided a DNA sample which matched DNA found at the scene. The 5 wrongly convicted men had their records cleared and were awarded a total of about $45 million in lawsuits against the city and state of New York, but you can't give them the years they spent in prison back. If you want to know about a case even closer to home, you should know that in 1999, Keith Longton was arrested by the Prince George's County Police Department and accused of raping and murdering his estranged wife. It took the police 38 hours of aggressive questioning without a lawyer present before they got what they took to be a confession. Keith Longton spent 8 months in jail after his conviction before a different unit of the PG police got curious about a series of rapes and decided to look at the DNA sample taken from Keith Longton's wife. They were able to match that DNA to rapes that had occurred around the same time, including 7 that occurred while Keith Longton was in prison. They were eventually able to catch the real rapist, and Keith Longton was freed. Not only that, but there were 3 similar cases of false confessions obtained by the PG police around the same time, which led to an FBI investigation and then to an agreement by the PG County Police to videotape their interrogations. And don't forget that while we heard a lot more about waterboarding, sleep deprivation was an important part of the enhanced interrogation techniques that were approved for use against suspected terrorists after 9/11. I have never liked the phrase defund the police. It seems to have become popular as a slogan, but it obscures what really needs to be done, which is to reinvent the police. The aspect that most people have been focusing on has been the use of deadly force against suspects, but the way police interrogate suspects in custody needs to be addressed as well. There's an article in today's Washington Post describing a study that found that 54% of all wrongful convictions are caused by misconduct of police or prosecutors, including coercive interrogations. Currently, 25 states require that all interrogations for major crimes be videotaped from beginning to end. And this is exactly the kind of thing that would have kept Keith Longton and the Central Park Five from going to prison for crimes they didn't commit. But that also means that there are 25 states where the police can interrogate suspects for as long as it takes to get them to say what the police want to hear. I hope that this gives you all some valuable perspective on the importance of improving the way police do their jobs. It's not just the killings and brutality that you see on tape, but it also includes the interrogations that you will never see on tape. And don't forget to be grateful the next time you lay your head on your pillow for a good night's sleep. Not everyone has that opportunity. Fellow Toastmasters.